Today we're going to be using our clay. This is actually called a slab of clay because I've already rolled it out to a certain thickness and cut it for you. So you have a nice piece of clay that's a slab piece. I am wearing gloves at this moment because I have been cutting clay and using clay all day for the past 2 days, and the more and more you use clay, the more drier your hands become. So that is why I have this on. But for your time frame today, you don't need to have gloves. Now, we talked about our Oaxacan Mexican folklore pieces that we're going to be making last week. And last week we came up with our ideas of what animals that we wanted to do and so forth. So for today, you can either do the sketch of your animal that you wanted to do on your clay piece, or I have 2 different templates. I have a template of a parrot as well as a lizard. So when you're doing this, if you wanted to use a pre-made template, you can take those 2 off my VIP table desk and use that, or you can freehand draw your shape. Some people like to do the cats or unicorns or other animals, and when you're doing this, utilize, just like we do with our drawings, you have this big piece of clay. So try not to draw something that's really tiny on here, because clay does shrink and it becomes more fragile the tinier the clay piece is. So you want to have a bigger clay piece. So let's get started. So if I'm going to be using this clay template, you'll notice that it doesn't fit this way. So just like a puzzle piece, figure out what works with your clay shape that is pre-cut to you. And this one, if I turn it on an angle, it fits. Okay? So if you're using a template like this, I recommend you can start using the clay knife right away, or if it's easier for you just to get used to what the shape is, use the skewer, and this works just like a pencil. So lightly draw in your shape of the parrot, okay, and you can see that it's building and is taking off some of these clay pieces. I recommend just squishing it on somewhere else above it. Draw out your shape like this. Okay, and then I'm going to take my template and I'm going to put it back in a few minutes at that table, so if somebody else wants the parrot template, they can use that. So if you're drawing your animal shape, I recommend doing this first, because if you don't like it, clay is forgiving. You can use the little sponge cup. Don't take the sponge out. All you do is you just kind of gently tap it with your finger and all the water comes off, and you can easily erase what you did on your clay piece. The more water you add to your clay piece, the more slippery and wet and slimy it becomes. So you want to use as little water as possible on your clay piece. But if you like it, that's great. You can just draw on it. So obviously, when you're drawing with a pencil, you don't want to draw too hard because you want to erase. Think of the same thing with clay. Now, if you don't like the parrot's face, you can look back at it and go, what did I do wrong? And I can go, oh, I realized I didn't come up. So that's why it doesn't look like it had a beak. Take this off. There we go. Now my parrot has a beak. Okay? Once you have the design that you like, you're going to take your knife and you're going to push all the way through. Just like when you're cutting a sandwich, you want to go all the way through. And I just work in pieces. So here's my one clay piece that I just cut off. I'm going to put that to the side. And then I can cut off the next piece right here and put that to the side. Here, I realize, ooh, I kind of like that feather a little bit longer here and sharp, so I'm going to leave that instead of cutting that off. And you'll notice I'm not doing the same way. I'm changing directions as to what's easiest for me. Okay. There we go. And there is my bird. Your extra clay, when you're done, you're going to take that and put that in the extra clay bag so I can reuse that for something else. Now, my clay bird, any of these pieces that you'll notice have clay bits kind of popping up, I will just touch my finger again in the water and I'm just going to smooth out any of the rough edges on my clay piece, because when it dries it gets very sharp and you don't want anything sharp on your animal when you go to paint it. If there's cracks or different things that you don't like, again, don't make it too smooth. When you're doing this, I'm going to show you, you don't want to push too much, because the more you push it, it's going to push through the bottom, make an indent, and then it thins it out. And the more you thin it, the worse it becomes. So here, just to show you, the more you play with clay, the drier it gets, as you can see. But that's where water comes in, and when I do the water, it smooths it out nice. If you do too much water, it's going to turn into slippery mud, and you don't want that. After you fix it up the way you want it to be, you can then go back in and think about your Oaxacan pieces. They had all these really neat details. So maybe you want to add in some fun feathers and just lightly draw these details that you want to eventually paint on here. Okay? You could have cool feathers, larger ones as they build or not. Okay? And just keep adding in all the fun shapes that you want to add in. Alright? And just keep going. You could add in eyes. You'll notice I am not pushing all the way through because I don't want it to go through, but if you want for the eyeball to go all the way through to the other end, you can push it and twist it, and then that's something fun for you. So add in the texture if you want. You don't have to push some areas a little darker and deeper, but not all the way through. Again, you don't have to do many because we're going to paint this, but that's where you're at. Okay, and there's our clay piece.